like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of September 9th, 2019 be adopted with the addition of agenda item 9C, application to amend the quality of life official community plan and zoning amendment bylaw for a portion of property located on Bigger Place. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Skelton Morvan. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of August 19th, 2019 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Renhowa, seconded by Councillor Adey. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the public hearing meeting of August 19th, 2019 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Renhowa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3C, recommendation of the minutes of the regular council meeting of August 19th, 2019 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And item 3D, recommendation the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of August 19th, 2019 be received. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Skelton Morvan. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, first up we have a special guest tonight, Michelle Kirby from Partnerships Engagement Manager for Childcare BC regarding Childcare BC funding. Welcome. I think if you did, are you doing full screen? You can go to view full screen.
View full screen. Oh, view full screen. Thanks, guys. I know how to use Adobe.
Good having some millennials on council, eh?
Well, I'm used to having PowerPoint, so whoops. Anyways, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate this opportunity very much, and I'm just going to try and keep this brief because I know you have a full agenda, but please feel free to interrupt with questions, and I'll do my best to answer all your questions. So this is basically, I'm just going to dive right in. So the goal of our Childcare BC program is to build a universal childcare system for BC over the next 10 years. So it's an ambitious goal. Obviously, that's a short window to build a universal system, but what we hope to achieve is much like our public education system and our public healthcare system, is provide access to quality, affordable childcare to anyone that wants it or needs it, all across BC. So that requires obviously some investment, and so in 2018 the provincial government made $1 billion commitment to childcare for over 3 years. We've added $300 million to that this year in this year's budget, so it's now $1.3 billion investment, and we're building the system on a strong foundation with investments in affordability, accessibility, and quality. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what those 3 pillars of the system look like, and what kind of investments we're making to make lives easier for parents and for families across BC. So affordability is the major platform plank, because if it's unaffordable, then parents can't access it, and we've lost the plot. So there's 3 big programs for affordability, which the $630 million investment is going towards. So there's affordable childcare benefit. Not sure how many of you folks are parents to young children, but those that are and have access to a licensed childcare space will have access to an affordable space, and this affordability program called Affordable Childcare Benefit. If you're under the family income threshold of $111,000 of annual income, so depending on how many kids you have, how much you're paying in fees, as long as you're underneath that threshold, you will receive some form of benefit. So I'll give a couple of examples to illustrate that for you. If you're a single parent with an infant, so you've got a 1-year-old that you've just put in daycare, and average fees across BC range, but the average is $12.50 a month for an infant toddler space. In Victoria, it can be as high as $2,200 a month. In Vancouver, about the same. But across BC, generally, it's about $12.50 a month for an infant toddler space. So if you had a single parent earning $45,000 a year and paying $12.50 in fees, they would receive $900 in affordable childcare benefit, $350 in a childcare fee reduction initiative, which is another program I'll tell you about. And between the two of them, their fees are reduced to zero. They get $1,250 a month benefit. So you can imagine through programs like that, when we used to have a program called Subsidy that you may have heard of, and about 20,000 families in BC received some form of subsidy. This program is already reaching 37,000 families. We expect 86,000 families to be able to access it once they all sign up and have access to licensed spaces. So as I mentioned, you have to have access to a licensed space to receive these benefits because the funding comes through our programs, our Child Care Operating Fund program. So the Childcare Fee Reduction Initiative is a $350 benefit for an infant toddler space, $100 if you've got a 3 to 5 year old. So here's another example. Say you've got a couple, they're earning $75,000 of family income. They've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Between the fees that they would be paying for those two kids, it's usually just over $2,000 a month in parent fees. Between the two programs, their fees are reduced to $289 a month. So just over $2,000 to just over $200.
So, being that like $1,200 is quite a bit in Prince Rupert, I mean, I can understand that in the city where it is a lot more expensive. Mm-hmm. So, is that like, do you have to provide receipts for like the funding, or everyone gets the equal amount?
No, so there's an online calculator. You have to go onto our website and sign up, and you put in your family income, which has to be verified, I guess, and then there's also you have to put in the fees that you're paying at your center, and then it will calculate a benefit for you. That goes through our Seek-Off system. So you're at a licensed childcare center. The fees get paid or reduced, through the center's Seek-Off funding. So it's kind of complicated, but they receive the funding directly, and so the parent fees are reduced that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So the operator gets the funding directly, and it's all done through our system. So it's all online, and we have a new system, which is totally escaping me the name of it right now, but My Family something online. Anyways, and it's, you register on there and it's all done online.
And just, you said it was 111,000 is the threshold.
Yep.
So from that point, are people completely cut off, or is it like reduced from that point on?
The only thing they can access is the Childcare Fee Reduction Initiative. So if they are earning more than $111,000, any daycare operator that's opted into the Childcare Fee Reduction Initiative has reduced their fees by $350 for infant toddlers and $100 for a 3 to 5 year old.
Would have been nice about 20 years ago.
I know, right? I know, I can relate. My kids are teenagers now, so.
2 quick questions. Mm-hmm. The threshold of $110,000 down in Lower Mainland, is it going to be the same for the whole province?
It is the same for the whole province. This has been ongoing. We've rolled this out 18 months ago. Okay. It actually was the fastest rollout ever. They rolled it out 6 weeks after the budget announcement. And so it was very quick because they wanted to provide relief immediately for families. So it rolled out in April 2018. But yeah, you're right. There are varying income levels across BC and varying levels of benefit that people are receiving. But the news we've heard is that the relief is welcome for all families under that threshold. I haven't actually mentioned all the programs. There's another one that we rolled out last fall called the Prototype Site Program. And that is our test case, essentially, for rolling out of universal childcare across BC. So we took 53 sites of more than 300 that applied to participate. And we tried to cover the geography of BC. We also tried to cover every range and type of childcare. So you have everything from Grandma Marg's Daycare, which is a small in-home multi-age care center with 7 children in Tofino, all the way up to a large big box style childcare center in Coquitlam called Bright Path. They have corporate structure. They're all across Canada, and so quite a varying model, shall we say, of delivery of childcare. And so we tried to cover all those models as well as the geography of BC. And so there's the ones closest to you are Houston, Burns Lake, Prince George are the closest prototype sites to you. And so what we did was we've rolled this out. So we're replacing parent fees as much as possible with Ministry of Children and Family Development funding. And the maximum parents can pay, if they are earning more than $111,000 a year, the maximum they will pay is $200 a month. So despite their income levels, they're still getting a significant benefit. And the ones that are most benefiting are those in the Lower Mainland, where their fees were upwards of $2,000 per child.
And how are you advertising this? Because it's a broad spectrum of people. Some people don't have online
access.
facilities and things like that. So how is it going to be getting out to the public that all these programs? Are you going to be taking out paper ads or?
No, I'm here. This is me. That's why I'm here. Partly, but also through the childcare resource and referral agents so parents access those programs. The operators are informed through their CECOF, their childcare operating funding agreements. They're keenly aware of the funding and the opportunities available to them. They've all received information. And so, but the goal is really true to get the message out to parents and to the general public, right? That these programs are in place and that families are benefiting from them already in your community. That's part of the reason I'm here, is to make sure that you're aware that this is happening and that there's an opportunity for families in your community to have reduced fees and have access to, a quality license program that they may not have accessed before because they couldn't afford it. Yeah. So those are the big 3 affordability measures, the $630 million. And, but like I said, please get the message out there. That would be great if you could encourage, because we know that there's not everybody's enrolled and we'd love to see more people benefiting. Quality, we have $136 million invested in our early childhood educators, because we know that the quality comes from the person that's providing the care in the room, right? That's the teacher is the essential ingredient to a quality program. And so we're investing in early childhood educators through a wage enhancement program. So last year we gave them $1 an hour raise, and next year they'll receive another $1 an hour raise. We know that that's not enough, right? There's clearly a wage gap. I'm not sure if you're aware that the average wage across BC for an early childhood educator that has a 2-year diploma at minimum, they are averaging about $18.60 an hour. So this $2 an hour raise, once it's implemented next year, will make them, put them just over $20 an hour, which is helpful, but it's still not quite enough when you compare it to teachers' wages or other care providers that we trust with our most vulnerable and those people that are the most impressionable, which are our youngest children. So that's one component. The other components are an effort to recruit and retain early childhood educators by investing in them for professional development and offering. We have $4,000 per semester for new students to the early childhood education program, and $5,000 per semester for anyone that wants to upgrade. So if you've got a few certifications or you've got a few courses in, but you'd like to make the next level up in your education as an early childhood educator, you can receive up to $5,000 per semester, which generally covers the cost of tuition and makes a dent definitely in the cost of living to go back to school. We know that there's not enough access to programs, so we're expanding the access across BC while trying to sort of really re-examine the accreditation process and basically all of everything, because it hasn't really been looked at for decades, but looking at legislation and changes to the way we operate childcare through the post-secondary institutions across BC. The final pillar is accessibility. So having access to a licensed space is essential to being able to offer, like for parents to access those affordability programs and for this to work, right? We really need to make sure that, like public education, that everybody has a space. So we know we need thousands of spaces across BC. There's shortages everywhere. So the goal for the three-year vision that we have for now is 22,000 spaces. We're well on our way to that, and we've made some significant advances with I think almost 10,000 spaces built or committed so far through funding. It takes a while to build, but we're definitely well on our way. But I'm here to hopefully inspire you folks to collaborate with us or encourage partners in your community to take advantage of this funding. So I just want to point out quickly that there's also a UBCM childcare planning program, which you guys were successful in applying for. And I just wanted to show you that there are 74 communities across BC that are also participating in that program. So thank you for doing that. That's great work, and that's important. That's an important step towards making a good plan for your community and understanding the need. You know, we know that you're going to do an inventory of the spaces that do exist, which helps us, gives us a better picture of what we actually have, because we haven't had enough data collection really in this area or investment in childcare before. So this really helps us get a better idea of what's out there and what the needs assessment will be for your community. So thank you for doing that. So I'm here to mostly talk about the Childcare New Spaces Fund, which is a 100% provincial funding program for public sector applicants. So local governments, school districts, First Nations, post-secondary institutions, Northern Health, hospital districts, regional districts, those are the folks we're looking to because we know that they have land in most cases or assets that they might be able to add on to or use the land to build new spaces. And then these will be held in the public trust. This is a public investment, and we'd like to see it kept in the public trust and held for the long term, right? So we offer up to $3 million per facility. It started out at $1 million last year. You may have remembered that from last year's UBCM announcements. But we realized very quickly that a lot of places couldn't build very much for $1 million. So we've increased the limit to $3 million, and as always, the application process is open. There's no deadline. We didn't set a deadline, so if you're not successful, though, I have to wait till next year. It's open all year long, so we have about a 6 to 8 week turnaround time from application to decision and funding commitment. So it's a fairly streamlined process, and we're hoping that you'll consider that. I've got a few examples that I wanted to share with you. District of Vanderhoof used our old program, which was much more limited and required some contribution from the district. They partnered with a few different, like the Integris Credit Union gave them that building for half price because they said they were going to build childcare, and they said that's a great cause, we'll support that, and we'll provide you with our building for half the cost. And the Northern Development Initiative Trust contributed some funds as well. They partnered with the YMCA of Northern BC by, what actually happened was Mayor Jerry Thiessen invited the YMCA of Northern BC to come to a council meeting. She presented and shared with them what her program looked like in Prince George, because they didn't have any licensed childcare in Vanderhoof. And so having survived the nightmare of not having licensed care for his own family, he wanted to make sure that that was something that they could offer. Also struggling to attract and retain doctors and nurses and teachers and other professionals to the community. He recognized that there was a real need to provide childcare. and group licensed care. So they, so I guess Lynette Mikulishin, the general manager of childcare programs for the YMCA of Northern BC, came and did this presentation. Then, just like a awesome local government politician, he got into his car after the meeting and drove around the town looking at sites with Lynette, saying, "Well, would that work? Well, would that work?" And which I think is awesome, because that's, you know, how you guys work. It's great. So he identified a possibility in his own church, and so they opened the 16 3 to 5 year old spaces, the 20 preschool spaces, and 24 school age spaces. And then when this Integris Credit Union came along, they applied to the capital programs of BC and asked for funding to support the creation of 8 new infant toddler spaces, and they moved into this building. They also added recreation services, which they'd never had before, so it became a rec center as well as childcare. And the wonderful spin-off benefit of this whole collaborative effort was that he said they were always considered a welcoming community, but many of the residents didn't feel included. They felt like if you weren't a member of a particular group or organization, that you weren't included, and it was just a difficult place to be. So the nice thing about a childcare center and a rec center is that kids don't see those divisions, and they don't judge whether you go to the same church or not. And so the kids play together, brought the parents together, and he said they've gone from being a welcoming community to being an inclusive community, which I think is a beautiful spin-off benefit of this whole adventure. So that's, then there's another model. The District of Tofino operates their own center. It used to be operated by parents, and the parents just got burned out. They couldn't do it anymore. So they asked for help, and the District of Tofino took over. So they now have 3 full-time ECEs working for them and 1 part-time. They've offered a living wage to their ECEs to encourage them to stay and continue to be employed there, because it's difficult to compete with rising costs of housing, particularly in Tofino. And so that's been the mainstay of that center, so that they can continue to support 37 working parent families in their very small community. But it's a different model to have them working directly for the district. This is the District of Oak Bay, where I'm from, and the project that I am very proud of. We partnered, the school board had this beautiful high school it was waiting to be replaced as the biggest seismic risk in BC from 1992 until 2012, when it was finally awarded a new school. And they applied for a neighborhood learning center fund, which is an additional piece of funding that you can get from the Ministry of Education. And so that brick portion on the right-hand side of the building there on the bottom goes all the way the length of the rugby field. So it's a huge, long space that's all run by the Recreation Oak Bay, by the district's recreation programs. And they pay a $90,000 annual lease to the school district to operate that space. And we had a very rundown old change room that was a daycare for 3 to 5 year olds for about 30 years. And it was leaking and falling apart, and it was already near its end of life before the daycare even moved in. Anyways, long story, they moved in to that space, brand new space at the front of the building, and then the rest of the spaces are multi-purpose rooms that offer before and after school care. But they also have access to the rec center, which is just adjacent on the other side of the field here. There's a rec center with an arena and a pool, so the kids get to go back and forth and access those rec programs and have a much higher quality of before and after school care as well, so 3 to 5 program. They offer the lowest fees in the region, the highest wages, because they're CUPE employees for the District of Oak Bay, and so they don't have turnover, so it sort of sustains the program and keeps the quality high. The extra benefit for the District of Oak Bay is that they end up netting about $280,000 a year, which pays for the $90,000 lease and then some. Helps for the maintenance and operation of that space, and also helps for the maintenance and operation of our swimming pool and our arena. So a win-win-win, providing the service to the community at great benefit to everybody. This is a different model where we've done modulars with the City of Burnaby. City of Burnaby signed an MOU with the school district where they would allow them to place these modulars on school district property. So they're just rolling out 2 of them now. This has been a long time coming, but it's a great program, and they've designed these beautiful modulars, and so we're pretty excited about them getting some relief and quicker, right? Because modulars are faster to implement than building a building from the ground up. They'll be operated by a nonprofit society that's all managed. The project is managed by the city. The school district contributed the land, and we'll continue to have a relationship with that nonprofit operator as they are operating on their land, right? This is just an awesome example as a school district, but they have a neighborhood learning center where they've included everything under one roof. So they've got an infant toddler center, a 3 to 5 center, the public health nurse, a literacy program, Leapland indoor playground, and the Childcare Resource and Referral Center, and a preschool, all in a strong start, all in one wing, an early years wing of the school, which is adjacent to 2 kindergarten classrooms. And so kids move smoothly from one program to the next and right into kindergarten. They also have a relationship where the parents know the kindergarten teachers before they get in there. They can identify issues early and refer them to the literacy program or the public health nurse to get support. So it's a beautiful collaborative effort where we're seeing some wonderful early development index scores, which means that the vulnerability of children in that district is the lowest in the province at about 2%. Some communities like Prince Rupert have vulnerabilities in the 30 to 40% range. So this model really works well. So I think it's something to consider as we think about where we might build new childcare spaces. And finally, if you have any aging assets, I use this as an example of one way to create childcare and manage those assets. So this is an old school. There was a little bit of a fight over it between the school district and the city of Castlegar. The city of Castlegar refused to rezone. The school district wanted to unload it because it was an aging asset and they needed some money in the early 2000s. And the city of Castlegar refused to rezone it, so the school district wasn't very happy about that. I don't use this in my presentation to them, but but it's great for us on the other side, right? Local government loves that little bit of power. Anyway, sorry, kidding. So the school district decided to hand it over to this community school association. So it's a society that now owns the school. But they can't afford to maintain this aging building, and they've got a leaking roof. So what they did was apply for funding to renovate one of the classrooms and make 12 infant toddler spaces. They'd already got a whole bunch of other childcare in the space, a 3 to 5 program, a strong start, preschool and school age care was all under that same roof, that leaking roof. So what they did was they applied for funding to renovate one classroom, created 12 infant toddler spaces, and fix the roof. So that solved the problem for all of those programs, and they're all under one roof now, and they've actually done even better than they used to because they've got that continuum of care. So families have one stop, for dropping off any age of child at that center, and it's really done wonders for their bottom line as a society. If you're considering or tempted at all by the $3 million per facility, this is your next steps. We could review the guidelines online. There's all kinds of supportive documents on there, like how to plan a project. But basically, I would say that identifying partners in your community, looking for nonprofit operators that would be willing to expand, and trying to identify locations where that would work, maybe through your planning process. But if you can think of something right now, you don't have to have the planning process complete to apply for funding. So don't think that you've got this hurdle or obstacle in your way. That doesn't need to stop you from applying for the funding. Make sure you connect with your licensing officer, because they will have some input on how and where you build, making sure that it's a safe location, not next to a river or the inlet maybe, making sure that there's enough outdoor space to accommodate the number of children you want to, and engage with your community, find out what they need. I just came from Kitimat, where they're talking about building BC's first overnight care center. So of something that's outside the bounds of the norm because of our affordability programs, we could now consider offering that, because there's support for parents to be able to have that kind of service, and it would be shift work appropriate. And I don't know, I think this community might benefit from something like that as well. So I'm here to help with any questions you have, or and help you through the process.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council?
I just offer the comment. I was very glad to see the linkage between recruitment and retention, not just of ECE workers, but broader community, as professionals and doctors and teachers in the north and so on. Yeah. And the fact that these people are coming to a community where they don't have the extended family or the community connections where they could kind of work it out in terms of childcare. So it really does need to be a key piece if a community is looking at a process of trying to bring people in, which I think we are. So I think it's an important point to make.
Exactly.
Councillor Skelton-Morgan.
I just wanted to thank you very much for the presentation. So I myself have twins at home, 6-year-olds. So childcare was, and programs like these allowed my spouse and myself to be able to stay in the workforce and kind of contribute that way. But programs like these are not only essential for a healthy workforce, but they're also for just healthy families in general. And I really, really admire the repurposing of old district assets or city assets. We've got plenty of vacant buildings. So we've the pool is quite large, so we'll definitely be exploring options like that. So thank you very much.
Great.
Other questions from council? Yeah.
Thanks very much for your presentation. One thing that you had mentioned that I'm interested in knowing more is the prototype sites around the maximum payment per month. You said that's kind of a precursor to experimenting with universal childcare. So I'm wondering if the province has done any background research on what those determining factors or what those success metrics look like in applying that province-wide.
Well, we're learning as we go. I can tell you that it's been a steep learning curve because we signed these 53 contracts last October and they've been reporting back to us over the last, I guess, almost a year now. And so we're learning about the volatility of some models of childcare, and sometimes, there's, for private operators, there's a chance that they could get sick and then have to change ownership or shut down. And so we're learning about all those factors, and it's amazing. With only 53, we've encountered a lot of very interesting scenarios over the last 11 months. But yeah, the expectation is that within a year and a half, we'll have collected enough information to have a good understanding of how much it would cost to expand across BC, as well as what that might look like and what obstacles might be in our way and challenges that we might need to overcome. So that being said, there'll be a report generated next July to give us some information and to provide that to Cabinet. And then Cabinet would have to make a decision or determination of what that would look like going forward, whether or not BC has the funds to do it alone. We have a federal election coming up, which has some impacts on the funding, because we have an early learning and childcare agreement with the federal government right now, but will we have that next year? We don't know. And so there's significant opportunities, but also lots of challenges that may come our way. I feel that the goal has been really widely adopted. I go all across BC and share this information with communities all over BC, and everywhere I go, I hear really positive feedback about the programs that we've been offering, and particularly the prototype sites. You know, you can't, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, when you hear stories of how those prototype sites have provided relief to families. I love the story of you know, one mom of 3 kids in Nelson walked into the daycare and she was told, you know, your fees are going from $3,000 a month down to $600, and she fainted. The relief is palpable. Like you know, there's other stories of the you know, a single father who owed $4,000 to his childcare provider because he was behind and couldn't keep up with the payments. And then they became a prototype site. And we're able to tell him, you don't have to pay fees anymore. You know, that relief for him, having, you know, no longer having to turn to family and friends to provide care when his provider was saying, listen, we can't do this anymore. You have to pay your fees. We can't operate like this. The stress on the operator, the stress on the dad, the stress on the family and the family and friends that are surrounding them, that's all gone. You know, it's a relief. And so that ripple of positivity and support that people are feeling, I can't imagine that ever going away. So how long it takes us to roll out to universal childcare, I'm not sure. I can't speak for cabinet or our ministers, but I do know that there is great effort moving towards that. Hope that answers your question. Okay.
Oh, you have a follow-up? Yep.
Thank you very much.
Well, hold on 1 second. He's going to follow up, and then yourself, and then Councillor Randhow after. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, Barry. I just said, so that was just kind of a higher level question. I'm wondering now a little bit more specifically in terms of the process. The number of examples you gave, Vanderhoof, Tofino, Coquitlam, and Burnaby. Tofino seemed to be the only one where the actual municipality was employing, or there's another one?
There's 3.
Okay.
I thought that because like I said, I'm from Oak Bay, and so I thought that I don't know if I mentioned this, maybe I did that earlier today. I'm a little sleep deprived, started at 4:30 this morning, so, but I presented to Terrace Council at lunchtime, and I may have said it there, but I thought the District of Oak Bay was normal. I thought everybody had district-operated childcare, and because that's what we've always had. But it's unusual. Once I got into this job last year, I looked into it, and there's only 3 in BC that do it. Most municipalities own the facility, but lease it to a provider, and generally nonprofit providers. But in that case, so there's Tofino, District of Oak Bay, that runs their own centers, and Shawnigan Lake through the regional district of Cowichan Valley Regional District. So those are the only 3 that have turned to that model of sort of municipally run childcare so far.
Okay, and so what I wanted to follow up then was maybe in the Vanderhoof model and the Burnaby model, was the city and the district's role just essentially to manage the capital project, get the facility built, and then contract it out to an independent nonprofit operator?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we see most often is where you have the city, all the city does is apply for the funding and then find that operator to move into the space, and then that's the end of that. Like you've got, you can choose how much you charge to lease, to recover costs of operations and maintenance of that facility, but that varies depending on the municipality, depending on or the school district. Some school districts have very small or low fees, but they're truly it varies across BC. They're also restricted by a portion of the legislation for the School Act that requires them to only recoup the maintenance and operations costs. So they have to keep the fees low to those leases, but but municipalities aren't restricted by that.
Councillor Cunningham, then Randhow.
Thank you very much, Michelle. How is the model where the cities and the school districts are working together? It seems to be unnatural to go to because you've got your educational aspect of it, and it can be in the school district, and you're going to capture a lot of the people that normally wouldn't be captured in that. That's
Yeah.
working out fairly well?
Well, in the Burnaby model, what they've done actually is the Burnaby, the city of Burnaby took on the infant toddler, and actually Vancouver's doing the same thing. They're taking on the 0 to 4 spaces because they're more difficult to build, they're a little bit more expensive to build, and it just requires a little more planning and expertise, whereas the schools, surprisingly, have expertise in 5 and up, right? So they get that age group, right? They understand school age before and after school care, and it really makes sense, if you think about it, for school age care to be at school sites. So we don't have to bus kids elsewhere, and they don't have to be, or walking school buses to get somewhere else. And using schools for longer times, like after school, it's a great idea too. So we're investigating ways to encourage that collaboration. The Ministry of Education is doing a study right now to try and figure out and be able to come up with a resource guide for school districts to be able to better offer before and after school care. And there's all different kinds of models being tested. I know there's one in Coquitlam where they have a before and after school care program that's just really integrated. The kids come to school. They have essentially social workers that have been hired through this program to feed the kids and hang out with them and provide support in the morning. And then after school, they bring them into a multi-purpose space, feed them snacks and supervise play, and then work on homework and provide the link between the school and the parents for communication. So there's all different kinds of models, but I think that collaboration is definitely something we've seen success with.
Okay, the other thing is your $110,000 threshold.
It's actually 111, sorry.
Oh, it's,
Not to be picky, but
it's an interesting figure, and it sounds like a lot, but in today's high-income jobs, where, even when you're making a lot of money, a lot of it's going to rents and the cost of living and things like that. Is there any movement in the future of raising that limit up? Because it's, I know it sounds like a lot of money to a lot of people, but when you get double income families and they're both working to struggling, and they might meet or exceed that threshold, but they're still struggling like hell to find daycare and that. So, and I know there's going to be a little bit of relief, but in comparison to the $1,250, it's a big difference. And like what's happening in Prince Rupert right now is a lot of younger people are getting into the workforce, coming back to town and things like that because of the port and really good paying jobs and that. But they're still struggling with debt, high rents, and a lot of other things. And so I know when I think $110,000, well, but with a double income family and both parents working, childcare is so important. And sometimes $110 might seem like a lot. $110,000 or $11,000 might seem like a lot, but it gets eaten up pretty quick.
Well, that's the hope too, is that we'll expand the universal childcare system so that even if you're beyond that threshold, that you would still just pay $10 a day. So anyone that's in a prototype site is paying $10 a day or less. So depending on their income threshold, so they're still receiving affordable childcare benefit even if they're in a prototype site. So they could be paying nothing, or if they're above that threshold, they're paying $10 a day or a maximum of $200 a month. And that's the goal, is that would be across BC. So that threshold might, seem like a lot now because it's the fees are so high. But if we replace the parent fees with provincial funding, then with the universal system, then that would be capped at $200 per child per month across BC, which would make a significant impact.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you very
much. Sorry, I
much.
should have explained that a little better, but again, it might be the sleep-deprived state here.
Councillor O'Howa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. Like we have an office here, Ministry of Children and Family here. So people can get more information there, or you have any office here, or they have to go online only?
Well, to get more information about the affordable childcare benefit, they can either talk to the Childcare Resource and Referral Center in town, the Berry Patch, or they can check out our website, Childcare BC, and it's gov.bc.ca/childcare. The New Spaces Fund is for you folks, but parents can go to the website and have a look. There's also, and that's where the calculator is that will tell them how much their benefit is, or will be. Okay, no problem.
Other questions from council?
All this information available at the government office, provincial government office also?
Yes, it should be. Yeah.
Okay, that's another, it's a nice thing to know that people can go down there and
Yeah, to
get
get
help.
access to those programs. And the childcare resource and referral agents are often, they're willing and able to help with the application to affordable childcare benefits. So they, some offices are offering like they'll have a computer set up or an iPad that you can use if you don't have internet access, or access to a computer to sign up, or that you can do it on your cell phone. It's fairly family friendly, easy access. Sorry. Yes.
Other comments from council? Okay, well, I want to thank you for the presentation. We've been doing a multi-stakeholder planning process in Prince Rupert through an initiative called Redesign Rupert, and the discussion of the New Spaces Fund came up during that in the summertime with our MLA and such, and so some ideas have already been thrown around on potential locations, so we're looking to maybe make some decisions on where that could be. So we're definitely trying our best to get that quickly out to you guys so that we can capitalize on this great opportunity. So thank you so much for your
Good.
time today. We really
Great.
appreciate it.
Thank you. And we should mention also that we're doing a workshop at UBCM if you folks are going. So the Thursday afternoon, 2:30 to 4:30, September 26th. There's a workshop and the minister will be there. Minister of State for Childcare, Katrina Chen, will be there to give some further program announcements.
Great.
So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, be there. Yeah,
2:30
it's
to 4:30.
2:30 to 4:30 is the workshop, and so there'll be some new programs announced, and so different options that may be very appealing to Prince Rupert.
Great.
Okay.
We'll be there. Thank you.
Thanks.
You take care. Thank you. Okay, next up we have a report from our city planner regarding the application for development variance permit at 523 7th Avenue East. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What do I do now?
Hit
Escape.
escape.
Escape. Thank you. The first report is... The first report is for development variance permit at 523 7th Avenue East. The subject property is located at 523 7th Avenue East. Its proposal is to build over the entrance covered area and to build the deck in the backyard. The variance, there are four variances that are included. In the front property, setback from 3.6 meters to 1.4 meters. To 1.4 meters, and the easterly side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 0.5 meters, that is to align with the existing house, which continues to be existing non-conforming. Similar in a backyard to match the house. The easterly side yard setback reduction from 1.2 meters to 0.6 meters, and westerly side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 0.15 meters. This is an older neighborhood where many houses have existing non-conforming yard setbacks. The proposed renovation will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and in addition to rehabilitating the exterior, it will be extending the life cycle of this modest house. Public notifications were distributed as per development procedure bylaw immediately following August 19 meeting. As of the date of this report, and including today, staff received 3 over-the-counter general clarification, and no written submissions. There is no cost or budget impact to the city from granting or not granting the variance. The conclusion is actually in error, my error. It should read, staff did not receive any objections that would prevent approval of this variance and supports the recommendation.
Okay, any questions from council? So recommendation that the development variance permit application DP 1906 for 523 7th Avenue East proceeds to final consideration. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Skelton Morvan. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. We'll grab Councillor Niche back, please. Right? Okay. Okay, next up we have a report from the state planner again regarding the development permit application for Rupert Lawn and Garden at 22550 at Bellis Road.
On August 19, Rupert Wood and Steel, on behalf of Get Mackay Niska Society, submitted an application for redevelopment of present lawn and garden facility. The full application is attached. The subject property is located at 2250 Bellis Road. The existing and the proposed use is permitted in a City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw, with an exception of having an adequate space to provide for necessary parking, which has been remedied by Get Mackay Niska Society securing a land lease from the city in this area here. The proposed building is going to sit basically over the footprint of the existing building. It will be a frame structure which will continue to provide gardening services as well as a coffee shop. The new building and the addition of the coffee shop will be a welcome addition to the Seal Cove area. The applicant also provided a description of the proposed signage, which without drawings, and it is not included in his development permit. However, once sign renderings are complete, it can be an addendum to the development permit. The costs are covered by the application fee, and in conclusion, the proposed project complies with the industrial site design guidelines. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions from council?
Just one observation. I think it's a great asset, it's going to be nice down in Seal Cove, and especially if we develop other areas down there. I think it's definitely a plus for the neighborhood.
Okay, recommendation that council issue development permit number 1908. Moved by Councillor Ady, second by Councillor Renhawa. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. We'll grab Councillor Morrow. Okay, up next we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the July 2019 financial variance report.
Thank you. So for July, operating and utility revenues and expenses continue to be on track with the overall budget. The only variance of note is compared to this time last year is in the fiscal expenditures, which includes the Ridley Island tax sharing agreement payment to Port Edward. So this year we paid Port Edward $1.25 million, whereas last year we paid $878,000. This increase was budgeted for at the beginning of the year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions from council?
Just one question. If and when's the dam starting? It's a question people keep asking. Have we started the dam and things like that? So.
Well, as was mentioned last week, we've actually proposed an amendment to the 5-year financial plan, which we received 3 readings last Monday. And tonight, hopefully, it will be adopted. In that, we actually identify that the majority of the construction will be occurring next year.
But it's going to be started this year?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the permissive property tax exemption bylaw number 3447 2019.
Thank you. Council has the authority to grant an exemption from municipal property taxes under Section 224 of the Community Charter. Recently, Council updated its permissive property tax exemption policy, and staff conducted advertising to notify potential applicants and previous recipients of the intake period. The applicants were evaluated based on Council's policy and are included in the attached bylaw. The bylaw groups the properties into places of worship, public school, and other properties, which make up the remaining applicants who fit into senior and specified housing, cultural and recreational, and social service group owners or occupiers. The exemption period for the places of worship is a period of 8 years, whereas the exemption period for the remaining properties is 4 years. Annual confirmations within the exemption period are required from each applicant to ensure groups who receive exemptions continue to qualify. The bylaw is being prepared with all properties that meet the criteria receiving 100% exemption. Council may, however, choose any percentage of exemption. The increase in exemption estimated is approximately $50,000. The property and the value of the exemption proposed will be placed in the paper in accordance with the notification requirements under Section 227 of the Community Charter. Council introducing and giving 3 readings to this bylaw will enable staff to undertake the notification step. Any permissive tax exemption bylaw must be adopted by October 31st in order to take effect for 2020.
Thank you. Questions from council? Okay, the recommendations that council introduce and give first, second, and third readings to the permissive property tax exemption bylaw number 3447 2019. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have another report regarding the 2019 5-year financial plan. Do you have anything further to add from last Monday?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so the recommendations that council adopt the proposed 2019 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw number 3446 2019. Moved by Councillor Morrow, second by Councillor Ady. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we probably don't need a report from the city planner, but it's regarding the application to amend the quality of life official community plan and zoning bylaw for a portion of property located on Bigger Place. We've already done 3 readings. This is to recommendations that council adopts the proposed quality of life official community plan amendment bylaw number 3445 2019 and adopts the proposed zoning amendment bylaw number 3443 2019. So moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Scott Morvan. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a report from our CFO regarding the Moresby tank removal.
Yes, I'll be presenting it, given the Director of Operations is not available tonight. So as mentioned, in relation to the 5-year financial plan bylaw amendment, last week, staff determined that it would be best to remove the Moresby tank. As such, an RFP process was performed with our contracted engineer recommending that the city award the removal of Tank 3 to Sumas Environmental Services. Funding has been just approved in the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw. Therefore, Council's positive resolution will enable staff to proceed having this work done in 2019.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Ady.
So that's the one that's closest to the Anchor Inn. So I guess my question would be, what is the fate of the other 2 further down the road there?
Those will definitely be considered in future years, but this is the one that needs to be removed out of all of them. More needed because it did suffer a damage from a tree fall years ago. We did repair it right away, but given the fact that it is the one that is compromised possibly if the repair fails, it's just best to get rid of it now.
Any further discussion? Okay, so the recommendations that Mayor and Council approve the recommendation of the Director of Operations award the Moresby Tank Removal Project Tank 3 to Sumas. Moved by Councillor Reinhauer, second by Councillor Ady. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, any reports, questions, or inquiries from members of Council? Councillor Ady.
Yeah, I'd just like to offer a comment and a suggestion for our next meeting with respect to an issue that has been in the media, and that is the situation facing the fishermen and shore workers based on a very difficult season. So I visited the fish hall and had a chance to sit down with the president of UFAWU, Joy Thorkelson. We had a long conversation about the difficulties. And she said at that time that they were drafting a letter that they would send to federal fisheries and environment ministers and their provincial counterparts, which they have done so. It's dated August 1st. And I won't dwell on it in detail, but basically there's three parts to it. One is that it describes the impacts on workers in the coastal communities, including many First Nations coastal communities. And they are significant. It's been a very tough year. And then it spends a little time talking about causes, and of course this is where you can open things up to debate, but they're very clearly focused on climate change as one of the big pieces of that puzzle for why things have been so difficult. And then they had two asks of the federal government. One was that the federal government recognize this as an emergency and respond in terms of support. And their argument being that in the case of wildfires in central BC, for example, relief was offered. In the case of flooding in the past, relief has been offered. And since this, they believe, is linked to climate change, it would fall into the same category. So they're asking for that, and they're asking for a meeting. Now that was dated August 1st, and to be honest, I'm not sure if any progress has been made since. But what I would like to suggest for us is that if the situation continues to be unresolved as we get into October, when we get towards our next meeting, that we do two things. One, that we would ask Joy Thorkelson to come and talk to us, describe it to us in person, and offer any sort of sense of what we might be able to do to help. Now, we do recognize that this is jurisdictionally, this is very much a federal issue. I understand that, but maybe there is a role for us to play. And the second piece would be that we would, at that time, if this, we're still trying to solve the problems, that we would offer a letter of support to them in terms of the actions they're taking to advocate for their members.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Adie. And yes, I've been following that on the media as well. I think maybe what would be appropriate rather than doing, because you're saying potentially things could change by October, is that maybe you could interface with Councillor Thorkelson, Joy Thorkelson, and see about, because you can put things forward into the council agenda before the deadline of the next meeting. So if they do require a letter of support or a delegation to come, you can let our staff know that, and we can put that as part of the agenda rather than tonight having to do some sort of notice of motion or anything like that. So perhaps that would be something you'd be willing to do for the next council meeting?
Certainly. I will follow up on that. And I do want to add that at no point did our conversation drift to the common experience of being councillor on Prince Rupert City Council. We didn't talk about it at all.
Any comments on that? Councillor
Yeah. I think we're reaching a crisis situation here, very similar, if not identical, to the cod one on the East Coast, whereas the diminishing stock of salmon all up and down the coast and the pressure being put on it by so many things like climate control, overpopulation of certain predators for the fish, the sports industry, commercial, First Nations, everything, It's a situation where everyone has to work together, but I think the federal government has to recognize that this is the same situation on the West Coast that happened on the East Coast, where they stepped in and gave financial support to every community and every fisherman, and it doesn't seem to relate to the West Coast. And I can't understand why. We're two coasts, one country. But, I would support anything that puts pressure on the federal government to recognize the fact that the salmon industry in BC is in a crisis situation, if not an emergency situation. Something has to be done about it, and the sooner the better than delaying it. And I know the fisheries DFO is coming together with the new Fisheries Act and things like that, but you know, this is something that needs immediate attention. And how we do that, I don't know, but anything we can do to support it, I think we should be. This town was based on fishing, and we've slowly seen it eroded to where, you know, the heydays of the fleets coming to town and everything, and money in everyone's pockets gone now, and they may never come back if we don't do something about it.
Good point. Other comments, Councillor Renha?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought up last year too about the scheduled service for via rail. So again, like people approached and they gave really bad experience. Like average these days is 17, 18 hours from Prince George to here, and some nights 21, 22 hours. And older people with kids, it's very hard for them. And I think if we can write another letter to Minister or CN for any fixed like scheduled service for VRA, be nice.
Yeah, so why don't we do a notice of motion then for the next council meeting to have a letter to the minister to inquire about that that issue.
And maybe also to CN too.
Okay.
Yeah, because they own the lines.
Other reports? Councillor Scott Morvan?
Just a note for tomorrow at lunch from 12 to 1. The RCMP Victim Services is hosting a World Suicide Prevention Day. So for those to take a minute and honor all those affected by suicide, raise awareness, and reduce the stigma around mental health. So just tomorrow at City Hall at the front lawn. It'll be from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock p.m. tomorrow.
Great, thank you very much. Other reports from council? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Renhow, second by Councillor Morrow. All those in favor? Meeting's adjourned.